Hello, Mrs. Clam.
Hello, Mrs. Little.
Did you hear that the tragedy around next block?
Next block? What's the tragedy?
You don't know?
Mrs. Clam shakes her head.
You have to know this. Let me show you. Mrs. Millard, who lives in next block, died.
That's pretty. How come?
You know, Mrs. Millard was afflicted with heart disease because of the mistake of news. Her sister Josephine misunderstood that Mr. Millard was killed by a serious car accident. She told Mrs. Millard in broken sentence, veiled hints that revealed in half-concealing. Oh, by the way, Mr. Millard's friend Richard was there too. And Mrs. Millard wept at once. Then she went to her room alone. She would have no one follow her. The following statement was said by Josephine. She was so worried about her poor sister that she looked at her through the chasm on the door. At first, she sat on a roomy armchair and looked around the window. There were some voices. A paddle was crying his waves, and countless sparrows were twittering. Then she kept soap for a while. Suddenly they were filled with horrible silence.
I wouldn't say clearly, but her expression seemed to be real that time.
And then Mrs. Millard laughed, with shrill laughter. She started to chatter. She said about husband's indifference. She also mentioned she would be more grief-stricken. And then came the broken words, like happy life, no cycle, and so on.
You shut.
Josephine said Mrs. Millard seems to be ill and shout, "Free! Free! Free!" This behavior frightened Josephine. She was afraid that her dearest sister would make herself ill, so she knocked, in an urgent way. Back her sister opened the door. Mrs. Millard resisted at first, but she still followed Josephine's word in the end.
She smelled as a sunflower.
She said she had never seen such a bright smile on Mrs. Millard's face. At that time, Josephine thought her sister came down. So she was hand in hand with Mrs. Millard and they descended the stairs together. At the same time, someone was opening the front door with the latch key. Guess what? It was Brandy Millard. He entered, a little truffle-stained, composedly carrying his grape stalks and umbrella. He'd been far from the scene of accident, and did not even know there had been one. He stood amazed at Josephine pressing cry, at Richard, quick motion to scan him from the view of his wife. But Richard was too late. When the doctor came, they said she had died of heart disease, of joy that kills. That's the cause. Josephine blamed herself very much.
I care about her.
But I can't understand Mrs. Millard's thoughts. What an idiot! What you can do with money? I think her husband was excellent in this part to do her well. Haha, I prefer comfortable life to intangible things. Hey, have you heard that?
And so, would you want to change it?